Hey, welcome back to ChatterBeans, the podcast where coffee meets conversation and we spill a little more than just caffeine. I'm your host, Isaac Kong, and we are officially kicking off season 2. This season, I'm bringing you more of the real stuff. Stories from everyday people with extraordinary lives. People I've met in coffee shops, at the gym, friends of friends, and sometimes just by chance. We talk identity, growth, the messiness of life, and of course, coffee. Today's episode is with the brilliant, hilarious, and refreshingly honest Michaela Morgan, a 6th grade social studies teacher, comedy writer, and grad student who's not afraid to speak her truth. We talk about what it's really like teaching during and after COVID in the US, navigating ADHD, finding community in unexpected places, and how she balances her LGBTQ+ identity with life in the classroom. She's got jokes, wisdom, and a deep love for both coffee and curriculum writing. And trust me, this one's got heart. So grab your mug, find a cozy spot, and let's get into it. This is ChatterBeans Season 2. Michaela, welcome to ChatterBeans. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. And just to set a little bit of the context, you reached out to be on the podcast and you're the first person that I really don't know anything about. So this is a brand new conversation. We're sitting here on Sunday evening for me, Sunday afternoon for you. So over to you. Tell us where you are in the world. What does life look like? Wherever you want to start.
So I am 24. I am a middle school teacher who teaches in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And I'm also in grad school part-time. So I take evening classes every Monday and Wednesday. I drive about 45 minutes from Drexel Hill to Westchester. And it's actually not that bad because I listen to my little audiobook and I'm set. And then we learn about like anti-capitalism and education. And I'm like, this is great. I love this.
Amazing. And what are you studying in evening school?
So I'm taking my master's degree because in order to get, I currently have an instructional 1 in the state of Pennsylvania. So in order to get to my instructional 2, because my instructional 1 is only valid for about 6 years, I need to get, it's not a full master's degree. It's about 24 post-baccalaureate credits. However, if I get my master's, then I get a pay bump.
Nice.
And once I get my instructional 2, it's valid for 99 years. So I can finally renew it when I'm 125.
Perfect. Just when you'll need it.
Yeah.
And
if we still have like education and all that, whatever year that is.
Who knows, right? With AI and all of that, you never know.
Oh my goodness.
What do you teach in middle school?
I teach middle school social studies. So I teach 6th grade, which is the very youngest I'm able to teach. I actually can only teach 7 to 12, but because the middle school is 6 through 8 and it's that middle school setting, I'm able to teach 6th grade. But if it was kindergarten to 6th grade in an elementary school setting, I wouldn't be able to. So I teach 6th grade geography. And then I also teach a comedy writing elective as well as a 1960s history elective.
How interesting.
I love it. It's so fun.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the things. So the 1960s, I'm super fascinated. Like, what sort of things are you teaching and how interested are they at that age, I suppose?
I think there's nothing that brings like a 13-year-old boy more joy than learning about wars. So with the 1960s, especially here in the US, huge time for the Cold War. So we actually start our unit in the 1950s with the post-World War II, Marshallization and the Marshall Plan and all of that, just to kind of get them sorted of like, hey, here's what it's like. So when we learn about like the Cuban Missile Crisis, you're like, why is everyone worried about nuclear war? So we do that, which is so fun. I love teaching history and I also love teaching modern history because there's so many primary sources I'm able to use. I very much
Yeah.
have the mindset of however old the child is, whether they're 12, 13, 11, that's how many minutes on a good day they can sit still. So I like to
Yeah.
get them moving around as much as I'm able, or at least talking to the people around them. And I think because I learned that in my undergrad when I was learning to be a teacher with student teaching and all the different lessons and all the field work I missed out on because of COVID. But there's something about this generation, and I'm sure people have said this every single generation, where it's like these kids are different. These kids are just learning things differently.
Yeah.
But with computers, with AI, with tablets and access to so much technology all of the time, these kids need to just read a book. These kids need to sit down and not stare at a screen for 8 hours a day.
Totally. Yeah. And just thinking about school then, because so yeah, were you coming out of college when COVID was happening?
I was a freshman in college when it was shut
Interesting.
down. I remember
Yeah.
so distinctly when they sent out that email. It was the week after we came back from spring break. And my roommate at the time, because with the US, so many of our freshman dorms are doubles. I
Right.
know that's a bit different because my mom's from New Zealand. So whenever I was explaining, hey, like I have a roommate for freshman year, she's like, that's just so crazy that they make you pay all this money and learn. And when I was in nursing school, we got a single and we got paid. And I was 17. I'm like, okay, well, this is how it is.
A little different
But
now.
my roommate came back and she had all this hand sanitizer. And I was like, oh, what's up? And she's like, you haven't seen the news? Like, there's one confirmed case in New York. And I'm like, oh, I'll just go to Target and buy a bottle, I guess. Because we didn't know how it was going to be. So she's
Exactly.
freaking out. And I'm like, I'm sure it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was.
It was. It was. When did it properly lock down in the US? Because we were like mid-March.
We were second week of March, like March
Ah, yeah.
14th, I want to say.
Ah, okay. I think we were the 23rd or something like that. So
Something
yeah,
like
crazy
that.
times. So obviously thinking back to when you were at school compared to like how you're teaching now, is it a different atmosphere? Is it a different vibe with these kids?
I think it is. Just because
Yeah.
when I was in middle school, we had computer labs still, or maybe if we were lucky, we had the computer cart that a teacher
Right.
could rent out. But these kids have one on one computers, they have phones
Really?
at such an early age, too. And like I always joke, I'm like, the iPad was invented in 2012. That's when these kids were born. Like, this is the first generation of iPad babies. But in
Yeah.
reality, COVID really had them staring at a screen if they wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Because so
True.
much of it was optional.
Yeah.
We wonder why our kids are 2 years below reading level. And I'm like, did we not just forget about COVID? Because
Yeah.
learning online is not the best, especially at a young age.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So thinking about to your early years, so when you were at school, did you always want to be a teacher? How did that
No.
journey really?
I remember in third grade, we had a little career fair where we had to make the little trifold of what we wanted to be. And I had no clue. So I was like, I want to be a farmer because my
Really?
mom's family, they're dairy farmers in New Zealand. She grew up in
Right.
Matamata and then went to nursing school, moved to Australia. And she actually met my dad because he's from Pennsylvania. He's from the area, but he was a tour guide in his 20s and 30s,
Really?
all throughout Europe, all throughout Western US as well. So he was the tour guide in Greece when she went on a tour when she was in her late 20s, early
That's amazing.
20s. Yeah,
And they hit it off straight like and yeah,
I
I
think
suppose.
so.
Yeah.
I hope so. They had 5 kids. They've been married
How
since 1990. So
really fantastic. And so you've got lots of siblings. Where do you place? Are you the oldest, the youngest,
I'm the
middle?
youngest of 5.
Are you? How was
Yeah.
that?
Uh, we grew up in a 3-bedroom twin house. So because I was the youngest, I was the only sibling who didn't have to sleep on a bunk bed. So I got my own
Nice.
bed, which was nice.
Yeah.
But I lived in after college, I moved back to my parents' house. I didn't move out until last March to my own apartment with my girlfriend, but I just remember being, especially during COVID, during like my early 20s, of like, how did you fit a family of seven in here? Like, there's not
Yeah.
enough space.
Yeah. Is that quite common? Like where you grow up, like big families and things like that? Because yeah.
Like, yes and no. I think like a generation ago, absolutely. Like, it's a very big Catholic, like Irish
Okay.
Catholic, Italian Catholic kind of area where like the ancestors and all that. But most of my friends growing up had maybe a sibling or two, but not so
Yeah.
much five. That was like a shocking fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like life in your area. So tell me about where you live now. Like what does it look like outside of school?
So I live in a suburb of Philadelphia. It's so nice because I live right next to the train station. There's a trolley that takes us to the city. So I live kind of like a small town kind of vibe, but easy access to Philadelphia. But I literally moved about 7 minutes away from my parents' house. So I moved from one side of the town to the other because I'm like,
Nice.
there's kind of that idea, especially in the US, of, oh, don't move back to your hometown. If you stay in your hometown, it's kind of like a negative thing. But I'm like,
Right.
but it's
Okay.
so cute. And I have access to the city and I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I teach about two towns over. So the commute is fine. Where I'm like, I like living here. Even though there's that stereotype of like, don't get stuck in your hometown. I like it. And I see myself
Yeah.
here for at least a little while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, why not? Like if you like it and it works for you and yeah, absolutely. And what about your girlfriend? So you mentioned your girlfriend. Is she local?
So she is from Delaware
Okay.
and we met in college. We actually met because we were in the same sorority in college. I went
Really?
to a
Tell me about
small
that.
liberal arts school,
Yeah.
which had about 2,000 students. It might be a little bit lower than that now. But I remember joining a sorority because I was like, oh, I'd never do that. Like, I have this picture of all the Hollywood movies and like the big state schools down south where there's like 3,000 or like
Yeah.
300 girls who all look the same and they're all cheering and clapping. I'm like, "Ah, that's not me. That's not me." And then COVID hit, and my friend at the time was like, hey, I just joined the sorority. I think you would really like it. I knew some of the people already in. And I was like, you know what? Sure, it's 2020. I want friends. I feel like I don't have a sense of belonging at college yet because everything's online still. So
Yeah.
I joined and I ended up loving it.
Did you?
I did. It was about 50 people, even my freshman year, because freshmen couldn't rush. They couldn't go through recruitment at that time. You would have to wait until your sophomore fall. But I knew people still, and I was like, oh, Phi Mu's the gay sorority. I'll join that one if I were to rush. And then I did.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Did you? Is there
Yeah.
like, is it how I imagine it for like, so lots of events and lots of like parties and activity? Is it like that? Like, because
Yes,
again, I've got the movies in my head. Like,
I'd say so. I thought it was so fun. My favorite part, we would have like initiation with all like the candles and like the white dresses and memorizing the creed where I would sit there because we would have to do it every semester when we got new people
yeah,
because it was this old little tradition from like the 1860s, 1870s, whenever they invented the secret society. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, if Anne of Green Gables could make up like a ritual or make up like some kind of like event for her friends for like a secret society, this is it. I
Yeah.
loved it. I thought it was so like fun and I love tradition. I actually went to the national convention back in 2022 in Phoenix, Arizona, because I was essentially their last resort. I was on the exec board, so I was the DEI chair, which I loved doing because I'm like, oh, I get to teach people, I get to talk about diversity and inequities in the campus and all of that. And the president at the time, my good friend Eden, she asked almost everyone on the board because it was over the summer and we would have to pay for our own flight. Everything else was included. And she asked literally everyone on the board, and I was probably like the eighth person she asked. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. Because my dad always told me if you have the opportunity to travel, do it. And I loved it. I befriended every middle aged woman from the South there. I made so many friends because I'm such a social butterfly that
Yeah.
the two of them, they were trying to figure out like a point system. It was Eden, who was the president at the time, and our advisor. They were trying to like revise a point system and like all this like nonsense of like how things worked. And I would just be there. I would talk to new people. I would share stories, and it was so fun. I honestly loved it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, and definitely seems to suit your personality from what I'm picking up, which is, I guess, why you reached out to the podcast as well, because you love to chat and meet new people. So, which I find fantastic. You briefly mentioned, yeah, like joining this sorority and like COVID times, it was quite difficult. Do you think that has had an impact on like friendships that you've made, or because you got into that, actually, it was okay? It was a bit of a slow start, I suppose.
It was a bit of a slow start. I really, when I went into college, I wanted to be in the comedy groups. And I auditioned, I was a freshman, I didn't really get in. So then I was like, okay, like I have multiple semesters, I can still try out. So I was just trying to find some sense of community because our college was such a big theater arts college, but I was a history major. So I just wanted to do the clubs for fun, but it was really competitive. So I'm just kind of searching. And I feel like every 18-year-old who's like in university for the first time, they're just so desperate to find like a place on campus. They want to belong, which is how humans are in general. But sometimes you just have to go out on a limb and try things out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I joined because I was like, you know what? It's 2020. If I can talk to people, even if it's through a computer screen, that would be lovely.
And I just also want to pick up on having a girlfriend and like, how is it, I suppose, in your area, LGBT, like your parents' response to that and things like that? Has that been quite an easy journey for you?
Yes and no. I think like my family's very supportive. Her family's very supportive. I think the biggest thing is just being a public school educator, especially with
Yeah.
sixth grade, because once they get to middle school, they're kind of figuring out like what labels mean. Like, what does it mean to be a
Yes.
boy? What does it mean to be a girl? What does it mean to be gay? What does it mean to be straight? So, like, the typical 12-year-old boy is just calling everything gay and calling everyone gay. It's
Yeah.
hard to be an openly gay teacher without fear of parents being making a stink or kids kind of like looking at you the wrong way. So I teach very much in a if you ask and you know what
Yeah.
that term is, I'll confirm it because
Fine.
every single time a girl they always want to know about your personal life. They always want to know how old you are. They always want to know what you're doing this weekend. But every single time one of my girls will be like, Miss Morgan, do you have a boyfriend? And I'll say no. And they're like, Miss Morgan, do you have a husband? And I'll say no. And then they walk away. I'm like, wait, there's a secret third option that you're just not thinking. But if they
Yeah.
are like, Miss Morgan, do you have a girlfriend? I'd be like, yeah. And then they're
Yeah.
like, oh, can we see her? and that's fine. Where it's kind of like a need to know basis, which I don't love, but I think just teaching middle school in general, especially in today's political sphere and the community that I
Yeah.
teach, I think like treat me like a person first before you know about my personal life.
What about amongst your colleagues and the teachers in the school? Like, do you feel like you can bring your whole self to school in that sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I think it's quite tricky, isn't it? When I think it must be quite a hard thing to balance with the children. I mean, I guess with the colleagues it's fine, but then yeah, if they ask, tell, fine. But it's quite hard, I suppose, to bring that subject up, especially with that age. So outside of teaching, you mentioned theatre and the arts. Do you pursue any of that stuff anymore?
I try to. So I am really big into writing. When I was in college, I was in both a sketch group as well as a stand up comedy group. And I just love writing. I love being funny and seeing where it's kind of like a puzzle in a way of seeing how can I make this fit? How can I throw a punch here? How can I make this work? So teaching the comedy writing elective I have right now, I think is really fun, even though I have one of my sections, eighth period at the end of the day, and they're throwing me a run for my money. But the stuff I read, the stuff that I teach them, and the work that they turn out is amazing. And I'm so proud of them. But right now, I love teaching. I like to think of it like my own little mini 45-minute stand up special every single day. But I don't have time for some of my hobbies that I want to.
Yeah. Is that because school is quite full on and then do you take a lot of work home with you?
I try not to. I end up taking work home. I show up to work about 30 minutes before my contract hour just to have that time in the day to set everything up. And even then, I'm still running behind.
So podcasts, do you like listening, I guess, podcasts and storybooks and things like that?
Oh, I love it. For a long time, I would listen to podcasts whenever I needed to do something productive because the way that my brain works, and maybe it's the ADHD, but the way that my brain works is that I need a constant, like, conversation, even if I'm not in the conversation, because it makes me feel like I'm a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic.
If that makes
Is
sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Is that how you found ChatterBeans?
I found it because at the time I was really into Starlight Express with the revival.
Ah,
I would get the little mega mix videos on my TikTok and I'm like, what is this? And I listened to the album. I'm like, I love this. So when Jeevan was on, I found your podcast and I listened to that.
amazing.
And then I listened
Yeah,
to the other episodes and I was like, yeah, this is my cup of tea. This is in
that's
my daily
amazing.
cycle.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show?
No, I'm over in the US. I don't have my passport. It
Yeah.
expired. But I would
Oh,
love to see it
maybe
if
one
I'm
day.
able, or go to Germany in a few years to see it.
So thinking about the future, like, obviously you're a teacher now, but like, what does the future look like? What's your like long-term goals? Have you got anything in mind, or do you just take it as it comes?
So I would love to teach older kids, whether that's high school or even community college or being a professor. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I love teaching history, but I also love teaching education because it's so different. And I love talking, especially to my younger colleagues, about methods, about curriculum, and how we can change it, especially in the current age. For so long, history is just kind of like whatever the mainstream is, whatever the cis white man wanted to say, we're going to follow that. But definitely in the recent years, we've become more, hey, what are the different stories that are being shadowed? What are the different stories that aren't being
Yeah.
told? How can we involve that into the mainstream? So I would love to teach history. I would also love to do curriculum writing, especially for like a
Really?
history textbook or some kind of program.
Okay. Sounds amazing. How are you going to get there? How are you going to make it happen?
That's a great question.
Let's keep
Right now,
going.
I'm just taking it day by day. I'm
Yeah.
teaching, I'm getting my master's degree. Maybe one day I'll end up getting a doctorate. But right now, I'm just existing in the present.
Love that. I love that. And you briefly mentioned ADHD. Is that something that's like that's been in your life for quite some time, or
Not until recently. I didn't really get diagnosed or think I had it until about the age of 20, 21. And it's been a long journey because so much of ADHD, especially with the symptoms, when they were doing studies about it, they would only do it with boys. However,
yeah,
ADHD shows very differently between boys and girls, where boys are very much that hyperactive, while girls are very more daydreamy, kind of more go with the flow. So I didn't realize it was an issue until recently because throughout high school, throughout elementary school, middle school, throughout my schooling, I was very much a B student. I could kind of get my way through it. I was really interested in the things that I liked, not so much in the things I didn't. But overall, I wasn't really flagged down as a, hey, we need to talk about this student. We need to implement something. So it wasn't until I got to college where I'm like, this is a struggle. This is a struggle to pay attention. This is a struggle to do my life, really. So my mental health and my journey with ADHD did not really come to be until the past couple of years. But I'm
yeah,
able to see a psychiatrist, I'm able to see a therapist to kind of get those methods so to succeed. So I'm trying to make it through, but I'm being semi successful at least.
yeah? And do you think that, so? Like identifying it was maybe some of the battle, and now that you kind of have, and you've got this support around you, that actually you can, you know, tackle it like head on, kind of face it now.
I think so, but even now, I'm like, do I really though? Because I feel like, and this might just be humans in general, but we're always comparing ourselves to others. And we're
Yes.
always trying to minimize our problems in comparison to everyone else. But in reality, we need to understand that everyone is going through some type of struggle, whether it's visible or not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting you mentioned ADHD because you're obviously part of season two. And in this season, we've got Talia who has been going through an ADHD journey. So hopefully you can listen to her episode. And we had Charlie as well that I've just recorded last week. So that'll be out at some point. And he's going through the assessment at the moment. So it's really interesting that I think there is much more conversation around it. Um, and it's less of an issue these days. It's kind of like people are happy to talk about it. They want to get the support and things like that. So, do you think it helps you as a teacher as well? Maybe identify it in children that, maybe or relate to them, maybe?
I think I can definitely relate to them.
Yeah.
I think that I end up being a teacher is one of this sounds awful. Being a teacher is like an ADHD person's dream. Not a dream, but I'm doing like six things all at once. And
Yeah.
I have to pay attention to six things all at once, where the office calls and I have to write someone a pass, but I'm also in the middle of teaching. And I'm also trying to look out for the student who is like throwing a ball up in the air and almost like hitting someone, and I have to be mindful of like the drama that's going on between students where I am just trying to teach, but in reality I'm doing like six things at once all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
constant
Perfect.
multitasking. It's
Yeah.
perfect until I get overwhelmed at the end of the day. And I feel so bad for my later classes because I'm like, my patience is done And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I'm yelling at you, but you're overwhelming me so much.
Yeah, that must be the balance of that is probably not too pleasant. But yeah, well, thank you for talking about that. I do find it really interesting, particularly those that have it or identify it later in later years, particularly when they go into a career, because I think it's really interesting. And Talia's journey as well of how she's holding down the career yeah, it's quite interesting to hear. So, thinking about life lessons or advice, have you got something that you want to share with someone or anyone that's listening to this?
I think my life lesson is do what you want to do, even if it doesn't make you money. As long as you are happy, you do not have to monetize every single hobby that you want. Because I was in that mindset so much in the past couple of years where I would get into something that is art. I would get into something like writing or comedy where my thought process was the only way that I can do this and do this successfully is if I get other people's approval, whether that is having it be monetized or whether that's having it be praised. It's okay to have hobbies. It's okay to like things just for yourself.
Absolutely. I love that bit of advice. It's exactly when, we've talked about it on this podcast, but people always have other passions. And I think we are living in a world slightly where everything's got to be monetized. I've had times with this podcast where I'm like, yes, it's doing really well. And it's, super amount of downloads and viewers and listeners. Right. When's the money going to come in? No, it's not about that. Like I did this because I wanted to have good conversations with people and I want to maintain that, the enjoyment factor, I suppose. But so really, yeah, I really like that piece of advice. Thank you. Thinking about something you've had to unlearn in life. Is there anything you've had to particularly change or, unlearn?
Not everyone has to like me. And I
Oh,
think teaching definitely helps to that because there's always going to be someone who's mad at you. I will give a student a worksheet and they're mad at me because they have to do work, but so always someone's going to be mad at me. Someone's always going to be upset with whatever decision I choose, whether good or bad. Not everyone has to like me, and that's something that really I struggle with because I'm such a people pleaser.
really?
Um
How do you deal with that then? You've just learned to kind of accept the fact that not everyone will.
yeah, it's just it has to be water off a duck's back. I just got to move on from it. I have to be confident with my decisions to say, "Hey, here is why I chose it. I understand you're upset. Here is how we can move forward."
Coffee. Are you a coffee person?
I love coffee.
Do you? Tell me about coffee. What's your go-to coffee order? Do you have a favorite place that you go? Anything like that?
If I'm at a small cafe, I love a cappuccino and then I'll just put one sugar packet in it. If I'm at like a big chain like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, I'll end up getting usually like an iced mocha or some type of latte.
Nice. Is there a lot of coffee in your area? Because like coffee's quite big in the US, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what we run on constantly. There's a bunch of small coffee shops in my town, so I love that. And then there's a bunch of chains like Starbucks, Dunkin'. In the Philly area, we have Wawa, which is a gas station, but also kind of like a made to order food place, which
Really?
sounds so
Wawa.
strange to say, but I love it. Like it's such a regional obsession to get like a Wawa hoagie and like your hot coffee. I go in almost once, twice a week to get like a little hot coffee every morning before work.
I'm gonna have a look. I'm gonna look at it. We now have in London, we have a Dunkin'.
Oh, that's
Like,
exciting.
yeah, I think we've got one. Um First one in the UK, I think. It must be. So it's quite exciting when we saw it. But it still doesn't have the same vibe as like the US or Canada. So
It's not very good coffee, but it is
no.
cheap and it does the job.
Yeah. It's what you need sometimes. It's
Yeah.
all good. Yeah. So if there was someone you could have coffee with, dead or alive, who would it be? Why? What do you want to talk about?
Honestly, I want to have coffee with some of my family over in New Zealand because I haven't seen them in over 10 years for some of them. Yeah.
And you're
I
going to
feel
take
like
them
that's
to
a boring
Wawa?
answer.
No, it's not.
No. I would not take them to Wawa. I just want like a cup of coffee, like over a kitchen table, chat, catch up on life.
All right, it's time for the quick fire round. First thing you do in the morning.
I look at my phone. I hate to say it, but I look at my phone.
See what's been happening.
Yeah. Sometimes I check the news. I get a little upset. And then I just go through social media.
Fine. Sounds great. Be honest, coffee or tea? Do you have tea? Have you ever had tea? Coffee?
I love
Yeah.
tea. Well, my mom's from
Do
New
you?
Zealand, so I always have tea.
Of course.
I've been on a tea kick lately with milk and sugar. I used to be more of like an herbal tea person without any milk, but
A guilty pleasure you'll never give up.
I've been really into The Amazing Race. I don't know if they have that in the UK.
No, I don't know it.
Oh, it is my favorite thing. It is a travel show. It's a reality TV competition where it's teams of two of an existing relationship. So it could be like two brothers, it could be a married couple, it could be two best friends. But somehow, with the casting in the early seasons, because my mom was obsessed with it, so we would always watch it every Sunday when it came out. Somehow, in the casting, they would always find a young couple that has been dating for less than a year. And they're like, we just broke up, but we think that The Amazing Race can bring us back together. And it doesn't.
No.
So now
I'm gonna check it out.
It's so good. Now they're in like the middle of whatever country that they're doing their challenges in, and they're just yelling at each other the entire time because they should have broken up months ago. But now they're traveling together around the world doing tasks.
It sounds a little bit like a show we have. It sounds a little bit like a show we have called Race Across the World. I don't know if you know it.
Oh, I don't.
And you have like, four couples and they have to make their way across the world from point A to point B, but without a mobile phone and without flying. The amount of arguments, particularly in younger couples, it's quite interesting. It's like a BBC show, so I don't know if you would get it there, but yeah, okay, I'll check that one out. Favorite place you visited and why?
West Virginia. It is absolutely gorgeous over there. I went when I was about 21 on a college trip. It was a semester class, and then over the summer when school wasn't in session, we went on a 3-week trip going through the Potomac River. So we started in southern Maryland. We went to Virginia, Washington, D.C., and then we ended up in West Virginia where the Potomac River starts. And West Virginia is just like, it is the most beautiful place in the world. There is nothing like it.
Really?
And it has such a rich history, especially with coal mining production in the Appalachian region in general, where it's my favorite thing to teach is company towns, where I love it. Did they have company towns in England or UK?
Yeah, we have we have like former coal mining towns and things like that, and there's real history in those, but they're basically gone. We've still got like one steel works, I think, and it's quite an interesting space. I think families that have grown up there, but yeah, it's probably the only comparison I can make. But yeah,
because with the company towns, and it wasn't outlawed until later in the 20th century. But for a really long time in the company towns, the only way that the miners would get paid was with company script, which was their own currency, that you could only buy things at the company store. So you would have these company towns, right? You would get housing, you would get paid in essentially fake money. And it ended up continuing this cycle of poverty, this cycle of generations after generations still feeling the effects of this, because if you want to move, if you want to go elsewhere, even if you've saved up so much in the company script, you don't have the rest of the US currency. So you're kind of just stuck where you are.
Wow. Okay. So you got to experience, like, you got to see some of that area.
It's such a gorgeous area. Yeah, and it has such a rich history. The people there are like the nicest people you could possibly meet.
Really? Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's what's interesting about the US. I've only been to New York, and I've spent a bit of time in Canada. And I just find how it's so interesting, like meeting people from different parts of the US, and I just want to visit it all. Like I want to see every part of it, because it's fascinating how different it is. If you could time travel, would you go forwards or backwards?
I would go backwards.
When would you go
I
to?
think I would go to like the late 60s, early 70s, kind of that hippie movement, to San Francisco.
Any
I think
particular
that
reason?
would be fun.
Just love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Rich
Amazing.
history.
Yeah. What's the weirdest thing you've Googled recently?
I feel like I Google a lot of weird things when I lesson plan, but one of my highlights, because I always think I'm going to end up on like some type of like FBI list with the things I search, because I'm like, how to teach communism to kids? Where I'm like, how to explain African independence movement for 12-year-olds.
Love that. Favorite way to spend your day off?
Sleeping,
Sleeping.
listening to an audiobook. I can't sit down and focus and read anymore. Like that has left my brain. But I love a good audiobook because I feel like I'm finally able to enjoy things and finish things, because I always I always start a book and I never finish it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I have to do audiobooks now. I really try and sit down and read, but I can't do it. And finally, a small amount of joy that you've experienced recently.
That's a good question. Yesterday, I went to a concert with my girlfriend in Philadelphia. It was Sammy Ray and the Friends, and it was the best concert I've ever been to. We somehow ended up in the front, even though we came in later to general admission. And it was the most fun I've ever had at a concert.
Yeah. Just good vibes, everyone in a good mood.
Good vibes, amazing music, because she likes to highlight all of the instrumentalists as well. So they get solos. It's like a little jazzy. She's keeping up the energy for like 2 hours. It's amazing.
That's cool. Yeah, sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much. That is you on ChatterBeans done. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy that you got in touch, and it's been a real pleasure getting to know you and a little part of your life. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I loved having you with me. Don't forget to follow and share with someone who would love it too. Catch you next time on ChatterBeans.